I'd like to recognize Mr. Ed S. Miller, who has served USNI not only as a prominent author, generous benefactor, and dedicated board member, but also as one of the closest friends to the Naval Institute Press. Ed introduced today's award winner to the press and me, so thank you, Ed. So, I'm pleased to announce that the Naval Institute Press Author of the Year is Elliot Carlson for his book, Joe Rochford's War, The Odyssey of the Codebreaker Who Outwitted Yamamoto at Midway. Before turning to history, Mr. Carlson worked as a journalist for such newspapers and magazines as the Honolulu Advertiser, Wall Street Journal, and Newsweek. He holds degrees from Stanford University and the University of Oregon. Joe Rochford's War masterfully treats the biography of a complex naval intelligence officer who, in 1942, played a vital role in making possible the stunning victory at Midway. Acclaimed as a tour de force that, as one reviewer said, quote, at once captures the atmosphere of the dawn of U.S. Navy codebreaking, the ethos of the Old Navy, and the towering contribution of Rochford, unquote, Mr. Carlson's work demonstrates that even though the early months of the war occurred more than 70 years ago and have been the subject of intense scrutiny ever since, excellent opportunities to undertake original and important historical work on that period, and of course many others, still exist. That such good people as Elliot are doing this work makes it a pleasure to be in publishing. Congratulations, Elliot, on this outstanding achievement and for being named Naval Institute Press Author of the Year for 2012. We're going to present Elliot the U.S. Naval Institute Author of the Year medal for the press in 2012. Now let's go.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of real quick words. I was told 2 minutes by the Ricks Enforcers. Please, so. First of all, I have to say the obvious, that this is it's a very great honor for me to receive this award. I want to thank the entire Institute community for awarding it to me. There's a couple of characters I'd like to single out. Rick mentioned Ed Miller, and actually it was Ed who brought me together with Rick at a mythic lunch we had at the Cosmos Club. And first and only time I've been there, so I want to thank Ed for that mythic lunch. I also have to confess I was the beneficiary of a lot of inspired editorial work from Rick's team. For example, during one of these award luncheons that I was at recently, one of the judges came up and said he voted for the book simply because it was so beautiful, because it was so handsomely produced, and it looked so good. So I want to thank Rick and his art team for taking care of the outside of the book. I don't see my favorite editor here, Andy Rehill. I want to thank Annie and her colleagues for taking care of the inside of the book, which happily left me with very little to do. While I was writing this book, one of my fantasies is that I would one day wander through the bookstore at the Spy Museum. That's one of my favorite hangouts where I go all the time. And there would be Joe Rochford's War on the shelf, gleaming in the sun. And the other day, I did wander through the Spy Museum bookstore, and sure enough, there it was on the shelf, sitting right next to David Kahn's Codebreakers. I thought that was neat, and it made me think of George Keating. George Keating somewhere here? George. So I want to thank George Keating for getting the book out into the world. And he did. He got it into the Spy Museum. Another person who I want to say a word about is Judy Heiss. She is not here today, unfortunately. But if today I'm not a world famous writer, it's not Judy's fault. Last year she put me before audiences and on radio programs and weird, strange venues of all kinds that I didn't know exist. And so I want to thank Judy for getting me out into the world. I had a great year last year, thoroughly enjoyed myself, and just a great honor, and I thank you all very much.
Hello, I'm Richard Latour, editor of Naval History magazine. The magazine's Author of the Year award honors a writer or writers whose article has made a significant contribution to naval history and to preserving the history of the naval services. In selecting the winner, one of the most important factors the magazine's staff weighs is if an article presents a compelling, fresh perspective on a historic event or personality. In the case of popular subjects, it's extremely difficult for a story to pass that test. Similarly, I faced a challenge in finding a cutting-edge article for naval history's coverage of the 70th anniversary of the Pearl Harbor attack. The magazine had published dozens of articles about the attack, but almost all of them were from the American point of view. To get the other side's perspective, I emailed John Parshaw, who co-authored the 2005 book, Shattered Sword, which presented a new interpretation of Midway based on an analysis of Japanese operations. John replied that he had an idea kicking around for a while regarding Pearl Harbor that was based on his friend Mike Winger's research and insights. Before agreeing to take on the Naval History Project, he wanted to contact Mike and hopefully bring him in as a co-author. John and Mike's resulting article, Pearl Harbor's Overlooked Answer, presents a new interpretation of why the Pacific Fleet was caught so unprepared on December 7, 1941. Discounting conspiracy theories and conventional explanations, the authors point to Japan's rapidly developing aircraft carrier doctrine and capability, which culminated in the awesome Pearl Harbor Kido Butai, or Carrier Strike Force. According to the article, outside of the Japanese Navy, almost no one could comprehend such a massive coordinated operation. That is what made the attack so devastating. The author's contributions to the Pearl Harbor issue went beyond that story. Mike Winger also wrote Redemption at the Hand of the Enemy, which recounts how the attack revitalized the career of Lieutenant J.G. And John Parshaw contributed A Grim December, which describes Japan's Far East offensive during the first month of the Pacific War. John also created the issue's gatefold. It uses text, drawings, and maps to explain the Kido Butai's composition, tactics, and weapons. Among many compliments the magazine received for this issue was one from Pacific War historian Richard Frank. He wrote, in particular, the article by John Parshaw and J. Michael Winger is especially worthy of commendation. This is by far the best explication of why the development of the Kido Butai in 1941 was so astonishing and why it was, as the article indicates, Pearl Harbor's overlooked answer. I'd now like to introduce the 2012 Naval History Authors of the Year, Jonathan Parshaw and Michael Winger.
I just want to say that I've been reading the Naval Institute's publications since I was in college, and I remember even then thinking, wow, it would be cool to somehow get an article into one of those publications. Never really knew how I would do that, but I'm extremely grateful for this honor, and I'm very excited by it. I'm equally grateful to have avoided the 6 inches of snow that was dumped on Minneapolis this morning. I did want to thank both Rich and also Kelly Erlinger, who's the art director. I knew I could write the articles, but I didn't know that I could necessarily do the gatefold, and I appreciate their willingness to take on an amateur and let them do that illustration. I really derived a lot of fun from it. It was great. So thanks.
I want to thank Rich too, and thank the Naval Institute for this award with so many superb military historians at large in this country. I really feel fortunate to be even given passing consideration for something like this. I very much appreciate this. Particularly, I want to recognize my wife, Mary Ann, who has tolerated and suffered much for the cause of naval history. She's taking pictures of me with the iPad. And Mary Ann, would you stand and Albert and accept some applause, please? She has suffered, that's right. There's another person, too, that I'd like to thank in particular. I don't know whether he was able to make it up from the D.C. Navy Yard. Many of you know him as a leading historian at the Naval History and Heritage Command here in Washington. And over the span of a generation, this gentleman's friendship and guidance and generosity have shaped me into the researcher, writer, and historian that I am now. For 30 years, he has been a guiding light for me and has instilled a love of the U.S. Navy and of naval history as no one else in this world could do. He is one of the finest historians in the country. His name is Robert Cressman. And Bob, unfortunately, is not here, but I want you to give a round. There he is in the back. Stand up, Bob. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Merzlach. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Proceedings, and I'm very happy today to be able to present the General Prize Award for the Proceedings Authors of the Year. The General Prize Award recognizes the best articles to appear in Proceedings over the last 12 months. It is the oldest award given by the United States Naval Institute, dating back to 1879. Admiral Daly mentioned earlier that when he showed the minutes from the first meeting, that he said we walk in the footsteps of giants, and I think that is true when you look at the list of some of the names, anyway, that are previous General Prize Award winners, and those include Alfred T. Mahan, Ernest J. King, Stephen B. Luce, and Wayne Hughes. When selecting our winners, we consider a number of different criteria, including whether that work gains the attention, positive we hope, of senior leadership and moves the needle to advance the professional discussion in some way. We look for articles that challenge conventional thinking and offer alternatives that may not have been considered. Or maybe it's an author that chose to take on a tough topic that others shied away from for whatever reason. That person who accepted the dare to read, think, speak, write, and of course publish. This year's winners have done all those things, and I'm very happy to be able to recognize their achievements today. It really is one of the best parts of being Editor-in-Chief. Our first prize winner this year is Captain Jerry Roncolato, U.S. Navy, retired. Now, I've been fortunate to know Jerry almost since the day I started at the Naval Institute. I attended my first editorial board meeting, believe it or not, 8 years ago this very month. It was right around the time that Jerry took over as editorial board chairman. I was able to watch him in action over the course of the next 2 years as he presided over those board meetings. There were a lot of strong personalities and opinions in that room. Vince, you know what I'm talking about. Jerry was always a very calm and steadying influence on those discussions. So although some of the disagreements were intense at times, everyone always parted friends, and I attribute a lot of that to Jerry. Since I became editor-in-chief a few years ago, Jerry's continued to be a valued friend and mentor. He's always ready to offer helpful advice, and he's even steered a number of authors my way, one of whom, Captain Vic Addison, is a past recipient of this award. Jerry really personifies what we're all about at the Naval Institute, I think. He is a warrior, sailor, writer, thinker. During his long and distinguished career, he was a surface warfare officer, and we don't have time for everything, but just a few highlights. He was the captain of the USS Sullivans, later commanded Deseron 26, and his short assignments included Deputy for Plans, Policy, and Strategy. He has a lengthy and accomplished list of publications appearing in many professional journals, but it is for his latest contribution to proceedings that we recognize him today. That contribution is America Must Be Careful Where It Pivots, from the May 2012 issue of Proceedings. And Jerry reminded us that while all the attention a little over a year ago was on the pivot to Asia, that we had to remember that other potential adversaries also may have a vote in what we do or do not do as well. So while we may think we won't be as involved in the Middle East or North Africa as we have been in the past, those areas may still remain very interested in us. And that will have big implications for the U.S. Navy and our overall maritime posture. I think Jerry's warnings were particularly timely, as there has been much discussion over the past 12 months over what we should or should not do in places like Syria, as tensions with Iran continue to simmer, and all the while our maritime presence, especially our aircraft carrier presence, is looking to be reduced. So while it may seem that some of the policymakers out there haven't been heeding Jerry's warnings, we certainly have here at the Naval Institute, and the readers of Proceedings have. So it's a great honor and pleasure to be able to present this award to Captain Jerry Roncoletto, all the way in the back.
You got a big head. It's all but a I was told not even 2 minutes, so I will say this. On the way here from Bristol, where I live, I listened to my Victory at Sea music, which some of you will, and some of you will not. And it reminded me of a great era for the U.S. Navy, an era with just an amazing victory and amazing ability to figure out how to operate large forces together. And the reason we were able to do that, to the historians in the room, the reason we were able to do that was because of the rich debate and intellectual ferment and the professionalism that was going on from, say, 1919 to 1941. And it's so rewarding to hear today the stuff that's coming out of the Naval Institute and the work that's going on here, because I once wrote an article that was called No Time to Rest. Now I would write a new one today that says No Time to Think, because the people that are in the building, that are in the staff, don't have time to think. And if ever there's a time that we need to think, it's now. So that would be my word of whatever you want to call it, wisdom or whatever. But I do want to thank Paul for the honor of this award, and for all the staff at the Naval Institute I've worked with for so long. And you guys are doing great, and really good to see the trends upward, and keep going, keep charging. Thank you.
Our second prize winner is Lieutenant Commander Brian McGurk for his article, Rekindling the Killer Instinct, which ran in our June 2012 issue. This article captured my attention immediately upon arrival in our office. I read it, went through our internal evaluation cycle, and onto the editorial board. I knew it was a very powerful piece, and one that I thought took courage to write. Lieutenant Commander McGurk is a submarine officer, in case you couldn't figure that out. He voiced a concern in this article that today's technologically dependent and somewhat risk-averse submarine culture and community keeps young officers from cultivating the type of warfighting skills and the aggressive mindset that he thinks and he believes is going to be necessary for success in combat. The other great thing about this article is he used a great use of the Navy's history as he looked back on its pre-World War II submarine training. And he found that, or he believes that that contributed to some of the operational failures that occurred early in the war in the Pacific. And he worries that the same could happen again, but this time without that luxury of time that we had in 1942 to recover and learn and do better. So he says, today's submarine force must not only heed the precepts of Admiral Rickover, but also those of Commander Dick O'Kane. Now, the submarine community, often known as the silent service, and its members can be a bit reluctant to get their opinions out there, but I thought that Commander McGurk went out on a limb to identify a shortcoming and offer solid solutions. It took courage to speak out about this, especially in his own community. But that's what our open forum is all about, and he had that professional courage and confidence to subject his idea not only to the peer review of the editorial board, but also to criticism, and especially criticism perhaps from within his chain of command. Now, he can't be with us today as he is currently serving as the XO of the USS Michigan Gold Crew, but it's great to be able to recognize this young officer for his accomplishment, and we hope that he keeps up the good work and keeps writing for us. Our third prize goes to the man who's everywhere, and that would be Lieutenant Junior Grade Matt Hipple for his article, Cloud Combat, Thinking Machines and Future Wars, which ran in the July 2012 issue. Matt is one of our new junior officer writers, one of our brightest and certainly one of our most prolific. He's submitted a number of things to us. We have things still waiting to be published. I've told him that we have to spread them out over time so that it looks like we have more than one or two authors writing for us. But yet, if I could run them every month and make it look okay, I would. Not only does he write about topics of interest to the professional community, he does so in a very engaging way. And he demonstrates one of the most important gifts, I think, any person, whether naval officer or not, can have, and that is the ability to communicate effectively with the written word. This article introduces a concept that he's termed cloud combat, which he describes as the ability to mix mind and machine to bridge the divide between the mental intent of the warfighter and the equipment that can increasingly interpret and execute intent. As he continues to go on, the communication between man and machine creates a seamless battlefield striding force that is technically a fluid cybernetic organism with human beings at its core. And then he says, it sounds positively mad, but all the necessary technology exists in its infant stages. Rather than go on and say more, since I can't begin to do his article justice in a few words, I'll encourage you to read the full article when you have time, as I do encourage you to read all the articles of our winners today. But Matt, I think, is a visionary, and he is thinking about what the conflicts of tomorrow will bring, and he's trying to find solutions today. This work, I think, is in the finest traditions of the Naval Institute and Proceedings. And if that weren't enough, Matt also appears with, I think we mentioned it earlier, with Lieutenant Scott Cheney Peters in our current April issue on an article on the subject of 3D printing and additive manufacturing, which is an interest of mine, and I'm hoping to have more of this in the pages of Proceedings soon. But that article has received a lot of attention, a lot of positive attention, a lot of bounce, as we like to say. So his name is out there, and again, he's everywhere. Every time you turn around, he's on blogs, he's on websites. So we really hope that he'll continue to appear as often as possible in Proceedings. Now, he can't be with us today either because somehow he finds the time to also be a surface warfare officer, and he's currently serving as the XO of PC Crew India, rotating out of Bahrain. But I believe we're fortunate to have his father with us today, Mr. Richard Hipple, and he will accept the award on Matt's behalf.
Don't tell him.
I just have to say just a couple words. First of all, Matthew's everywhere but here. But he did want to thank the USNI because a lot of encouragement for him and a lot of support. So he's very, very much honored to receive this award. And I think the most important is you got some of the indications. I've been living with this proliferation of writing for many, many years, and he does need an outlet, let me tell you. So, it's taken down the amount of, I used to have to read all this stuff constantly. So now there's a new outlet, and I thank you very much for all the support. And it's exciting. And I think he's a visionary, too.